Item G, ESSER to allocation determination. Okay, and we'll continue with a period of public participation. Is there anyone interested in addressing the board this evening? No. Next is the approval of the minutes of meeting 1043, which was on December 15th.
There was one thing in the minutes, it said that we postponed our second session.
I wrote that.
Oh,
I was going to bring it up.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll need a motion to accept the minutes with the correction.
I move that we accept the minutes of 10:43.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. Any discussion or other corrections? If not, we'll vote in favor of accepting the minutes of meeting 1043. All in favor. Okay, next on the agenda is approval of financial statements of the December revenue and expenditure reports. I will need a motion for that.
And the review expenditure report.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Josh. Okay, any discussion on this? In favor? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Now we'll go on to the superintendent's reports. Then you have the floor.
First thing I have for you is just some Department of Education news and updates. The department has notified us that they've eased their timeline. You remember I was reporting to you guys that we need to spend this money by December 31st. Well, after December 31st, they said, we're going to extend the timeline after everybody had spent their money, which it's not funny, haha, but it's funny peculiar. It did help in some cases where we were pressed with some projects that were not going to get done. Some of the projects that we contracted through Third Eye Global and whatnot. So it gave us some breathing room. So the new timeline for any project in CRF 1 or 2 is now extended to June 30th. And we can submit for reimbursements up to September 30th. So we have some flexibility there. We also got our new Esser fund allocation. And we knew that our first allocation, which was $47,000, was going to be higher this time in this allocation. Some were expecting upwards of 4 times as high. Your allocation here in 33 is just shy of $200,000. It was 196,000 and change. This is part of the relief bill that Congress passed in December. And as you know, if you're following the news right now, President Biden is pushing for an additional $1.9 trillion package, and schools are going to be a major consideration in that allocation as well. So there may be more money in the future. This new allocation gives us a lot more flexibility. Our ESSER 2 funds, the ones that we just received or just got allocated, we have up till September 2023 to utilize those funds. So it's more long-term planning funds rather than fire sale, spend like we had in the last one. So we'll have to think carefully about some long-term things that we may or may not want to keep. Off the top of my head, things like remote teachers, where right now we're sharing remote teachers with the other 2 districts for the elementary school. I don't know that remote learning is going to go away come next fall. So we may want to consider or not that's going to be something we hold on to. We have an additional nurse in the district to help with our protocols. That's another factor that we'll have to take into consideration. Temporary support personnel that we have, our super subs that are helping out. So these are just some of the things. And then we'll have to look at, did we address all of our needs in the first rounds of funding or not? So we'll have more discussions on that. In fact, we'll have one later on in the meeting with our adjustment to the agenda, and we can discuss further. Governor Mills signed an executive order on January 15, and this extends the flexibilities to a minimum number of school days. So for us, what does that mean? It means if we have a snow day, we essentially don't have to make it up because that executive order is continuing as long as we're in the state of emergency. I just checked my email right before we started the meeting, and I saw that we got another executive order from the governor, and this one is specific to school budgets. For the school year 2021-22 only, voter approval of the school budget may be by referendum vote, notwithstanding any statute to the contrary. So I think what that means is you don't have to have a public meeting to pass the budget first time and then take it to referendum. You can just bring it right to referendum so that we skip the whole meeting piece of it. So, right. We'll know more. I just received this as we got started. And while we're speaking of budgets, I did put on your table, you should have when you arrived, the ED 279 that was released on Monday. And what I did is I just took page 5 because page 5 does have a summary of what's on, what your money allocation is, and I put the current year on page 1. So your first page is the current year. You can see I circled some of the key fund allocations. You can see in line 6 what your CTE allocation is. In line C, the green line, you can see your full state subsidy or state contribution. So that would be minus the CTE. If you take out the CTE from that 2,854,000, that's what's left for an allocation for MSAD33 for your 2 schools. And then you can see your required local contribution is 966,876. If you compare that to what they're projecting for next year, your CTE subsidy is a little bit down, but your overall contribution from the state is up. I think it's up upwards of 90,000 or so. And your required local is down. So in the whole mix of things, you actually have what they call a thumbs up, ED 279. You're actually getting more funding through the formula than you did last year, which is always good. You'll get more from state subsidy, less from locals, but the locals I know like it when we're asking less from them. So it's a win-win. So it gives us something to start with in the budget process.
Okay, next we're going to earn paid leave.
January 1, we started, a new law was put into effect called the Earned Paid Leave law. And essentially what that means is for every 40 hours of work that an employee completes, they will earn 1 hour of leave time. And that really was designed for your mom and pop stores throughout Maine that don't offer a bargaining agreement, your small businesses that really need to take care of their employees, but somehow that trickled into everything. So schools are now wrapped into adhering to this law. And it's tricky because all employees, including substitute teachers, can have access to the earned paid leave law. So now when we're bringing in substitutes, the people that we're hiring to take over for the people that are gone, those people can now earn leave time so they can be gone, which is tricky. Our athletic coaches can also earn paid leave time. So we're just getting our feet wet with it. One good thing that gives us some time is anybody who's currently under a bargaining agreement. It does not affect them right now until their bargaining agreement expires. Once their agreement expires, then you're going to have to negotiate the earned leave time into their contracts. So if you take the teacher's contract, for example, we give 2 personal days and 14 sick days. 14? I think so. So essentially we give 16 days to our employees every year. Earned pay leave is not as generous as those 16 days, but in order to adhere with the law, we're going to have to convert some of those into EPL days instead of personal days or sick leave days. So when an employee goes into their to request time off, we have a portal for that. Now, instead of seeing personal days, they're seeing EPL days, and it's based on hours instead of days. It actually gives more flexibility to the employee because the employee can take an hour off at a time if they want. It's harder for us as a school district to run that way because, as you would ask your principals, to find a substitute for an hour or 2 is impossible. So it's in all likelihood we might be bringing in a half-day sub to cover for a teacher or a staff member who's left for an hour. But that's part of the law and part of the flexibility. So yeah, like I said, we're getting used to what it all is. I gave you some information in your packet so that you can read up on it. But for now, we've converted everyone's time so that it reflects the EPL, so that we're in alignment with the law, and we've educated through emails. Lucy sent quite a few emails on, don't panic when you don't see your personal days and you see this EPL thing. It's the same thing. You're going to see 8 hours instead of 1 day, so that everyone is in the know about it. Any questions on that?
Okay, we'll continue.
So as you know, we had a plan coming out of the holiday season to put our learners in 2 weeks of what's called hybrid learning. Hybrid learning means that we're able to secure 6-foot distancing in all classrooms and learning spaces and on the bus, 1 child per seat unless they're family members. And we were able to do that with the entire student body at Dr. Levac Elementary School still going to school, by separating larger cohorts into 2 groups with monitor in both groups. Here at Wisdom, they're following an A-B schedule. Cohort A comes on Monday, cohort B on Tuesday, so on and so forth. And we knew that the goal was to do that for 2 weeks, and then February 1st, integrate fully if the time was right and we could safely do so. That was our plan, and we're still on track with that plan here at Wisdom. But unfortunately, as you know, we hit a bit of a snag yesterday with Dr. Levac Elementary. And I know on the surface, it looks like, 1 infected individual basically put out 5 staff members and a whole cohort of kids. But there is a bit of a trickle effect of what happened, because there were some other factors at play as well. But that is part of the nature of what sometimes happens. In hindsight, looking at and speaking with Principal Hallowell, the 2 staff members on duty at recess duty, at cafeteria duty, maybe we could have worked that out in a different way where they would not be a close contact and they could have been spared from this. But when we looked at what had happened yesterday, and we looked at who was going to have to quarantine for the next day, we made a team decision that it wasn't possible. We don't have any subs. There are no subs. So even if I was to say this teacher could deliver remote instruction from home, we'll bring in a sub, put them in the classroom to monitor the kids, which is what we would have done. We don't have people. So we had the principal who was principal in the office secretary yesterday, and we had, you know, the nurse that was running all over the place trying to, so everybody was all hands on deck, and it just, you know, it made things very challenging. So it was not our intent to move to hybrid for the next 10 days, excuse me, move to remote for the next 10 days. But with staffing being what it is, our lack of subs, we just had to. We talked today about ways that we can improve our plans so that, you know, there's not so much crossover. So we're talking about things like, okay, so we have one PE teacher. If he goes out, that impacts two schools, right? Because he works with all the kids. And we have one art teacher, same thing. We have one music teacher, same thing. Do we have to deliver instruction from those people remotely so that those individuals are never close contacts? That's one thing, you know, we can possibly talk about. The elementary school, it's easier to keep cohorts together to minimize. So the learners that were impacted by this case were contained. It was just that cohort of learners. That's good. High school, middle high school, you switch classes here. So it's harder to mitigate that at a high school when, you know, one teacher cannot deliver science, English, math, and they don't have the certification for it. So essentially the kids have to rotate in and out of those classrooms. Cheryl, did you want to elaborate on your situation yesterday and just talk about how challenging it was?
I think that you covered the scenario pretty well, and we really looked a lot yesterday at ways to improve, and one of the ways is, as we supervise kids during lunchtime, if we're not delivering instruction, is to try to step in the room, supervise, and come out, because a couple, and we only lost one teacher, by the way, the rest were at techs and a secretary, which still, in hybrid, that they're key players. But we just talked about things like not being in the room for 15 minutes. So like I have to supervise lunch. I walk in, look around, stand at the doorway. Think just more things like that and how we can supervise without being in that close contact. So we're looking at some things like that. But we were just spread thin and no support. And it was not that much fun yesterday, but we got a lot of input from staff and we really rolled through a lot of scenarios. And it came down to, in order to keep in hybrid for the next 2 days and next week pull in, we would have to have every star aligned, and I don't think that's possible. So that's why we made that decision. And you know, I think it was the only one we could make. I welcome any questions if anyone has anything to ask.
I think we were all looking at that dashboard and seeing that 0 for Dr. Levac Elementary and really priding ourselves. And we have a school that hasn't had a case. But things got real yesterday when I went to go see Cheryl and Steph. We had a Zoom. I mean, their eyes were wide open. And as I said, welcome to the show. You know, it comes at you instantly, and you know, all of the moving pieces and parts. It's really, really difficult. And you know, to just highlight the staff anxiety around when this is happening. They're troopers and they're professionals, and they understand that they have a doctor and Dr. Roberts who's saying trust the science, and they're doing it. But that's scary stuff. It's scary stuff when it was that kid that I worked with, you know, for 10 minutes on X, Y, and Z. Really scary, you know, and, you know, my family experienced it this week. My daughter was put in quarantine as a close contact, and, you know, we had that anxiety as a family. Are we all going to be impacted by this? She tested negative, so we're good. PCR test, not an antigen. So it's scary. And so we feel for the parents that are put in a situation at a moment where now you've got to figure things out for the next 10 days. We get that, and we'll never take that lightly. But we also have to figure out what's realistic and how can we make sure that we're, you know, taking care of everyone. So it's challenging.
May I add that the protocol, this is our first time running through the protocol of a project, we've seen other schools do it. The protocol worked very well. When Ms. Steph went through it, it really worked exactly how it was planned out. So I will say that was well thought out, well planned, and I'm sure she learned from the other schools doing it, different glitches, but it would work like clockwork, contacting people and doing the contact tracing. She made it look easy, but I know it wasn't, but it really, that part was amazing how well it fit together.
Thank you. Josh?
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
Josh has a question.
We were talking about yesterday, and obviously it was a perfect storm because the power was out.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, just something my wife brought up to me is when the power's out of the schools, are there phones that work? Do we have power fail phones?
Our,
We have a battery backup, but the battery backup didn't last very long.
I think we should probably look at a power fail phone for each building when the power goes out, that there's still contact in and out of that building.
Yep.
That's a good
And I'd
one.
say there's one other little issue though, it's like the tech center, even though their phones with internet, if the internet goes down, which it went down yesterday too.
Yep.
No,
We have the
I'm
phones.
talking about just a static line from
We
Fairpoint
need
or,
one, yeah.
okay,
Old fashioned.
just the old fashioned line. I think it, for emergency preparedness, it would be beneficial for each building to have a phone that works when the power's out, because if you have just a basic phone line, that powers itself.
Yep.
Because my wife was trying to call because we were in Fort Kent and we just read it was just posted that the kids were being released at 2, and we were both in Fort Kent transferring, because I had to go to the hospital because I obviously had no power at home. So she rushed back to home because we were scared that the bus was gonna drop off the kids. So I think it might be good to look at that contingency with power fail phone for each building.
Yeah, we can look into
We just
that.
need one per
Yeah,
building.
I couldn't even send,
This building, you will have one with the new lift that's being installed. It's a requirement to have a line, a phone with a line.
And that's,
So that one
You'd have
could
to give
become
up
your,
that number.
your emergency one if you, I mean, otherwise you're gonna pay 2 lines.
because if something happens inside, you wanna be able to contact out, and sometimes cell phones don't always work.
it's amazing because I couldn't even send an alert.
Yeah.
You know, so I was in a parking lot trying to do a mobile hotspot on my phone and I just couldn't, I mean, it was just, it was perfect. It was,
Just food for thought.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I had the same panic, because I wasn't sure, it was 2:20 when I realized the kids were
Yeah.
getting dismissed.
I was like,
And I was in St. Agatha, and I'm like, okay, did they put them on the bus, because they don't normally take the bus, and I'm like, I don't know what they would do if they show up home with no one home,
right.
and I tried calling the school, and there was no answer, and.
I didn't even get a message.
No,
There
we couldn't
wasn't
send one.
a post on Facebook.
I didn't know it. They just
Yeah.
dropped them off at my husband's birthday.
Surprise.
He was there. But
Is there a policy with the school about if there's no, will the bus driver just drop the kids off?
No,
No,
they
they
have
should,
to.
they're not supposed to.
No.
So I was gonna say that our bus drivers, we've had a talk just with Dave, and I'm sure with all of them, that children from our building, because they're the small ones, we want visual, especially our little, and not even just, oh, there are cards there. We want a visual as an adult and really know, and that's a very important safety step that we have right there. And if you didn't keep a parent at home, you leave them on the bus and bring them back to school. They're gonna be safe on a bus. So,
Any more questions?
one more.
I just want to walk through how this. I thought the kids ate in their room with their teacher, so people are covering their kids.
Can I address that?
Yeah, I just, can you explain it to me?
I can, and, I'll cover just that cohort from yesterday. It's a kindergarten cohort that the teacher, is in the classroom, Mondays and Fridays, 2 days a week, and the ed tech is in there the other 2. They're going back and forth, not every day, so we're not crossing that. But that ed tech needs a half hour for lunch.
Okay.
So one person goes in, and usually it's me, but I had another obligation, so that's why Danielle went down. And so it's 15 minutes, and then Miss Lisa comes over for the other 15 minutes, so that person can go cover another lunchroom. So that's how we've been hopping together for it. So that's how it hit 2 people for lunch, because the ed tech, they want to eat lunch every day.
Well, I get that, but like, don't kids like go to recess? Like,
Yeah, but when they're at recess, let's see.
I'm just trying to figure out how like, there's a better way.
Oh,
That
I
is-
would absolutely love that. We have to provide, the teachers are in the room when the students eat lunch. At that time it was Tricia. But then when the teachers eat lunch, they go outside, but the ed techs also do a recess duty. So we're trying to rotate duties around and lunches in there. And so it's kind of an all call, everyone's on duty for part of someone's lunch. And that is the only class that has two people. It's the only class that we tag team it for that, because this is the only way we can do it.
So, go ahead. Now, just a question, so I know that it's ed tech which are crucial to the whole school, but could the school run with just grades 4, 5, and 6? With however many ed techs you have left, if any?
I'm confused.
So
Instead
instead
of-
of putting everybody remote,
Yeah.
couldn't the white wings still go to school?
Yeah.
And
I guess we didn't consider that piece.
And like the little, because of course the little ones need more ed techs, and put the little ones remote for the 10 days, and then you have half the school in session.
We would probably do just the opposite though, keep the little ones for in-class instruction.
Right.
Yeah.
But depending on what ed
I
techs
just
are
feel
needed.
like it was like the whole school seemed like, it seems like some of it could run. Like I feel like this is so much. Like my kids were in tears.
I
And I understand that some people have to quarantine, but like the whole school seems a little bit drastic. Like, is it possible that there's enough staff that half of these kids could go to school for the next 10 days? And some of them might have to stay remote. I mean, we have to do the whole school. I'm just, like, the more kids that stay in school, the better. Because they were only back a week. They're traumatized. And this yo-yo is like, not good for them.
It's difficult for everybody, Bob. I agree. But I will admit, I did not consider doing only part of the school. We just kind of looked at the
Well, and
entire
it's a learning curve, and that's why I wanted to talk about it tonight, because I felt like the more people that put in their input, the more thoughts you guys would have on it. Because, you know, I feel like the less kids in it, because it's gonna happen again. For guaranteed, for
a
gonna
long time.
happen again. And so, and could it be a month? Could it be another week? It could be back, it could happen again. You don't know that. So I feel like we need to try to make the decision that as many kids that can possibly stay in school, you know, because maybe the next time it happens, maybe it'll be the opposite. Maybe those that different happens, some other kids can stay in school. I'm just saying, like, it's really hard on these kids and the yo-yoing and the parents too. I mean, it's very difficult, and like, I think it's really gonna affect them academically. I'm concerned.
I'm more concerned mentally.
Mentally too.
We're absolutely concerned about those things.
Yeah.
That was just never put on the table. That's what we need. That's what I need to say that that's what this is for us, is a run through and go, okay, now I get feedback. Let's step back and see what we can do again. So that's actually what we're looking for. And we're looking for that feedback.
You know, like, do you have enough staff that maybe 3 or 4 classes to be in school the next 10 days?
It's going to depend on the impact. But for this one, not only did we have people who were impacted this, we also had a couple of people who had close contact outside of school who were out too. So it was this perfect storm that affected so much. This was just a very strange one. So certainly if oh gosh, please don't, but if it happened again, we could. Yeah. I think you're probably right. I'm holding on the glasses on.
Yeah, I know, it's gonna happen again, and it's probably gonna happen multiple
So we
times.
can certainly look at that balance to look at, and I'm more of the little ones in than the older ones.
I'm just, the more kids that stay in school, the better, and definitely, I mean, I have a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a 3-grader. And my 4th grader actually, he was in 3rd grade in the spring. He's doing much better with this, because he's older. And he's more independent with the computer, and he reaches out to his teacher, and
The teachers are better at it
it's,
too.
the 2nd grade down is a hot mess. Like, it's like too much distractions at home, it's just, so yes, the little ones for sure are like the ones that it's definitely not.
Absolutely.
Because I do notice the difference between the spring and now for him. I think that 4th grade is going to become a little bit more able to function a little bit independently on some of their stuff. Anyway, that's one of my thoughts. Another thought I had was, do your teachers wear goggles?
Oh, they do?
They wear goggles if they're within 6 feet for more than just, if they're doing a walk by to help someone, they're not, but if they're working with a small group or any length of time, they absolutely wear goggles. Okay, and goggles and or face shields. I think they all, or mostly choose goggles.
Okay. And like, is there a possibility, like, I don't know how this works, but for you guys, but like, technically, if people have to share kids and classrooms, like for duties and like those kind of things, like it's not the primary teacher in a classroom with their student, okay? Is it possible that the staff that go from kids classroom to classroom for whatever reasons those might be, especially in an elementary school, because I find it really, I can understand a high school because obviously they share teachers and they change classrooms. It's a lot harder to cohort that. You'll totally get that. But for elementary school, for having like single classroom with one teacher, I feel like, is it possible to make the staff safer? Like, is it possible, like, especially, I know you guys got more money, like for the CARES Act, can some of the staff maybe fitted for like N95? So when they do go out of their cohort classroom, they would be protected and they would not be considered exposed.
They would still, yeah, they wouldn't change the guidelines for cohort being, because I argued this with this myself. I said, CDC says you have to be within 6 feet for 15 minutes or longer. Nobody in our schools are within 6 feet for 15 minutes or longer because we're all 6 feet apart. But the CDC will say if you're a classroom that's a cohort, you all have to go out. It doesn't matter if we have N95s. It doesn't matter if we have zero gravity rooms. They'll still say the same thing, which is challenging because we know all of our close contacts are hopefully going to be safe because of we have all of these protections.
It that is so sense to me because I mean, if you wear N95, you're not.
Preach. I get it. I
Yeah. If it's a prolonged exposure, I would definitely say it's not gonna probably be.
And you're following, we have some wonderful protocols, I'm impressed with them, and we have a nurse who monitors, and we all monitor each other and give reminders. And we agree, especially
Because I'm a nurse, and when we wear N95, we're not considered exposed.
we have different types of.
So I just don't understand, I guess I don't understand that. I'm just thinking like if the teachers who had to go in different classrooms, if they had that on during those duties, they would still be able to go to school. And it would just be the teacher in the classroom that taught the kids, because the kids would have to be quarantined anyway, so it really wouldn't make a difference whether she had it on or not, because kids would be home, so that would be different, but like people who go in and out, if they could wear those, to me, it would make sense, they wouldn't be considered exposed.
I can have Nurse Stephanie reach out to Emily Poland, who is the lead nurse, and suggest, what if,
If staffing is the issue, that for one case is closing a school, like, to me, that's an easy fix. If those staff that were not the primary teacher would have had N95s on, they could still go to school along with everybody else but that 10 kindergarten students.
This case right here wasn't one case.
Well, but it will happen.
I'll tell you what would solve all this is if we can get our teachers vaccinated, then we'll be fine.
I don't understand the process of how they pick who gets vaccinated, but that wasn't, I'm not the one who made.
Yeah,
it.
but
It should have been essential workers first.
Yep.
My opinion, because those are the people who have to leave their house and do their job, and the elderly can stay home and quarantine or, socially distance more because they're not as, they're retired.
And we just found out from Dr. Roberts that once you have been vaccinated with your second shot, 14 days after that, you no longer have to quarantine if you're a close contact. So that's the game changer right there.
But she said end of February.
Yeah.
And I did see that they're having trouble getting vaccines right now, so it's probably going to be on.
And I will say that Stephanie did call her consultant about the two people that were in for 15 minutes. One might have been 14, one, no one, approximately 15 minutes to say, hey, they weren't, it was in a whole room anything that's gonna keep kids.
Those are mine.
Can we examine tomorrow, Cheryl, see if we can get some kids back in and maybe we can look to bring some in Monday?
The teachers would welcome that.
Yep.
Greatly welcome that over remote,
Yep.
absolutely.
I think that's awesome that you even just considered that, because there's a lot of parents that have reached out, but also just are not upset because it's a situation we can't control, but they're just frustrated at how it all works, how it happens. And if there is a part of the school that can go back, at least that would.
Yeah.
relieve-
That's a great suggestion. We'll examine it for sure.
That will be working a little more.
But I would recommend N95s.
We'll ask, but
Because that is the respirator of choice, with especially this illness. with this
And you know,
disease
and
here.
there was a
And
shortage
goggles.
in the beginning, but now there's plenty. We got fitted for a new kind recently at the hospital. It's by 3M, it's not the same brand we used to have. And they're disposable, and I was told, use them we have plenty, we can get plenty. It's not, there's no shortage, it's not a big deal. So, yes, you have to be fitted for that.
Yep.
But I'm sure the hospital would assist with that. I don't see them being against that at all.
yeah, it would be about getting approval from
It's
you know, the
literally
CDC.
like a 2-minute fit test. It takes literally 2 minutes.
Yep.
And we've been waiting for a fit test for our custodian for at least 3 weeks right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't it require a physical and then the testing?
It requires a doctor's note,
I
because you
know.
need to have a physician approved.
Because it was quite a process to get our nurses and one custodian in each building, and it required training, but also the physician and.
Yeah, it requires fit testing, but it also requires a doctor to make sure that you're able to breathe through it. That's the only.
There are certain conditions that you can't.
But you could pick the staff that moves around the most. Like, you know, or the staff that you would need the most, that you would hurt the most to lose too. You know, I mean, it doesn't have everybody in the building. It can just be like, you know, if ed tech is what you need the most of, maybe your ed tech could get. I mean, it's worth looking into, because I don't see this going away anytime soon. This is gonna continue into the fall, into next winter. This is not going away. This is staying. So we need to come up with a long-term plan that's going to potentially keep the kids in school more. That's what
Vaccination is our long-term plan.
I understand that, but I think it's not gonna be as quick as you
I know.
guys want it to be.
No, we'll
So-
inquire about the masking and we'll see where we get with that.
I mean, I'm all for vaccination but I have a strange feeling it's probably gonna be delayed a little bit, because they're really struggling getting. For a while, they were coming in well, and now they're really having a hard time getting.
Yeah.
I
So,
just have a quick question, like, in the situation that happened, like, say we did bring some of them back, when we do the contact tracing, do we check to see if there are any kids on the bus were exposed?
They did not ride the bus.
Okay, but that is
That was a
something.
happy moment.
that
But
makes
we were
it even
checking that.
easier to put some kids
And
back
then
in school.
siblings, do you like, how would that work? Like if let's say one of the students, the positive student has a sibling in a different class.
The positive student would be, if you're exposed, oh gosh, I wish Steph was here. If you're exposed to a positive person, you are quarantined.
So
if
the
you were
sibling
exposed-
is quarantined.
Yes.
But not the sibling's
No,
class.
because the sibling is not positive.
Yes.
If the sibling goes positive, then they have X number of days. they
2
must
days.
back for contact.
2 days before symptoms.
Secondary contact.
Are not
Right.
quarantined.
So like, if there were siblings in other classes, that obviously that sibling is home, but the other students in that class.
That's correct. They're still free to come.
Okay.
Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you. Okay, we'll continue to winter sports update then.
Just wanted to update you that when we did return into our yellow model for hybrid, we did give the green light for sports to start back up. Just because we're in a self-imposed hybrid model. We're not in a state mandated hybrid model. On that same note, the MPA has changed their tune in regards to if the state puts us in a yellow or a red They're no longer saying that we have to end sports when the state puts us in those models. It's going to be a local decision for each case. So just FYI, if a Aroostook ever goes yellow because the state has placed us in yellow, you all get the choice on whether or not sports stay in session or not. The MPA is not going to say you shouldn't have sports. So we'll bridge that when it comes, but for now we do have our athletes starting their seasons.
So we're still doing it then?
We are Aroostook's green, yeah, and I think every school in Aroostook County except for one or two of the Caribou schools is green. The two Caribou schools are yellow, like we are. Mars Hill was in a red a couple weeks ago. They had a community outbreak. So we're trending in the right direction, moving to green.
Thank you, Ben.
Yep.
Okay, next is the administrator's report, which you have in your packet. I don't know if there's any questions or comments on this report. If not, we'll continue to items of business under old business. I'll let Ben listen. Yep.
So this is just going to be a reoccurring old business agenda item, Valley Unified Education Service Center. We were supposed to have a Valley Unified Board meeting on February 1. I reached out to the Valley Unified Board at the request of one board member who asked that maybe we should wait until the state board makes a decision about your letters that you sent to the regional school. So I shot an email to all of them and they were unanimous. And they all said, let's wait till February 22. So February 22 is now the new date. You do not have a regular scheduled meeting between now and then. However, I do have an agenda item F on the agenda under new business, where I'm going to suggest that maybe we should have another meeting because March 22 is really far out, and maybe have more discussion on what our plans are for Valley Unified. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when we get to MSAD33's plan for the future, item E, and we'll discuss the same line at that time.
On the agenda. And then, do we have any resignations, retirements?
No retirements, no resignations, no transfers, no new hires,
Okay.
and no current openings. Although, do we have an educational technician opening? We still have at the tech center, correct? Yeah.
Okay, next is the approval of the winter coaches. You have that in your packet. So we'll need a motion to approve the list of coaches for the winter sports.
I just have a question, because my memory fails me all the time. But I recognize some of these names, but I don't recognize them all. Can we ever have the years of experience, either coaching in SAD33 and or elsewhere?
I think that's a Jackie's one of the comes out that we have to put down.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get that information.
Okay.
Yep.
More questions?
So with that being said, actually, who in here is new? Like, they don't.
You are looking at your boys varsity basketball, Dominique Rossignol. He was also your boys varsity soccer coach.
Yeah.
Scott Pelletier continuing as the girls basketball coach. Corey Gendreau as the middle school boys. And then intramural volleyball, Scott Pelletier, and girls Tammy Lothrop.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the list of coaches?
I move that we approve the list of coaches.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, there is. Any more questions? If not, we'll go to a vote. In favor? All in favor? And the next item is the annual review of senior privilege agreement authorization, which is policy JHCA. So So you have that in your packets. So we need a motion to approve, excuse me, the senior privilege agreement for the second semester of this year.
And that begins on February 1.
I move that we accept it.
Gerard? Okay, is there a second? John? Any questions or discussion? If not, we'll vote. In favor? Everyone's in favor? Okay, next item is the school calendar for 2021-22.
In color. Yeah, you have a draft calendar, and you also have a survey that accompanies that. We do survey the staff every year on what they desire in their calendar. So you can see the survey results. MSAD33 had 29 respondents to the survey. Number one, which statement best fits your position on the school year calendar? Slightly more prefer a later start in August rather than an early end in June. So this calendar does reflect a later start in August. Number two, what do you prefer for workshop days? One at the beginning of the year or two back-to-back? The majority of your respondents said two back-to-back. So we do have that in the calendar as well. Number three. Oh, I miss licking my fingers. Okay. Number three, Christmas falls on a Saturday. What would be the ideal last day prior to the holiday? The majority would have liked Wednesday, December 22. So we made Wednesday, December 22, the last day.
I have just a quick question about it.
Yep.
So in the past, we've done, if there was like an early snow day,
Right.
we'd make it up before Christmas.
Yep.
Is that still a possibility there?
We got a lot of negative feedback last time we made folks come in on that day where they planned on not coming. So we haven't added it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty loud and clear. Number four, which statement best describes your position on collaborative team time? You can see about 50% would like one early release day a month. So we built in an early release day every month, except for November, because November has the two holidays. We put a Valley workshop after the Veterans Day holiday. And then we had some mixed information on harvest. So it wasn't really clear from this on what the staff wanted, because it's kind of contradictory. So if you look at number 5, the blue bar means the most people voted for. The most people voted for supporting a 2-week harvest break. But then if you've seen number 6, the majority are saying harvest should just be for 7 and 12. So I knew that I needed to poll my elementary staff and see what they thought, because this may be swayed by 7 through 12 folks. So when I did poll one question just to the elementary staff, it was based on, do you want a 2-week harvest break, a 1-week harvest break, or no harvest break? And it was almost 50-50 with the no harvest break and 1-week harvest break. I think it was 1 vote off. So in the calendar that I'm showing you here, I have Dr. Levac Elementary School not breaking for harvest, similar to what they did this year. And that's also what Madawaska Elementary School does. So we can discuss that further when I'm done the survey, but that's basically what the survey results said. And then with regards to parent-teacher conferences, which statement best matches your opinion? Parent-teacher conferences should never occur on Fridays or the last day of the week. So we did not put parent-teacher conferences on a Friday or the last day of the week. One of them is on November 10, right before the holiday, and the other one is on March 10, right before a workshop day. So we really, I think we did a good job trying to, and then you could see some comments on the backside that are always good, but we try to do our best to do what everyone wants. It's amazing how the 3 districts are right in alignment with questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 and 7. The harvest one though is mixed. So Fort Kent Elementary School, a huge majority said they wanted their harvest back for 2 weeks at the elementary level. So we put them in with the high schools. For you, like I said, your staff would have been good with a 1 week break. I just couldn't see putting another school on another different schedule. So here are your high schools and Fort Kent Elementary, here's Madawaska, and here's Dr. Levac. I thought it was so close that we might as well lump Dr. Levac and Madawaska Elementary together. Any questions?
Okay, so we will need a motion to approve the calendar for 2021 and 22. Motion, John? Second? Are there any more questions or comments? If not, we will vote in favor.
And this has been approved by all 3 boards, so this is your calendar.
Okay. Next is MSAD33's plan for the future.
So I did this exercise with Madawaska School Department, their board, and with SAD27 as well. So basically, we're going to need to sooner than later, and this brings us back to our Valley Unified discussion, talk about what's going to continue and what's not going to continue. Specific to you all, MSAD33 is currently in a 10-year strategic plan that started in 2017 with Madawaska and 27, and you have 8 priorities. It's a 10-year, so 227, yeah. And our plan was based on focus groups of various stakeholders that identified 8 priorities. And the elephant in the room obviously is priority number 1, but there are still 7 other priorities that we are either on track with or have completed. You know, retaining an elementary school in each district, a tri-district Valley Unified Adult and Continuing Ed, that's already done. A shared administrative structure, that's already done. Optimizing the tech center, we've put more programs and more things in the tech center in the past 3 years than has ever been there. Collaborating with UMFK and Northern Maine Community College, that continues to be strong. Connecting to the community, and then optimizing the use of technology. Technology use has catapulted this past year, obviously. So we do have those in place, even with number 1 being what it is. You know, if for the sake of argument, the regional high school doesn't happen, that doesn't mean that we can't look at a plan B to somehow connect these high schools and offer through the 3 high schools somehow, some way. We've advanced our technology, so there's possibilities there, and I think, you know, we can quickly put a plan B together, but I'm still hoping that plan A is still in play.
When do we hear?
State board meets on February 9. Yeah, and I know the school construction committee has a subcommittee meeting, I believe, on the 29th. So I think this, yeah. We also have Valley Unified Education Service Center. You're a member of that, and these are the shared services that we currently have in play. Superintendent, assistant superintendent, finance director, innovation programs and community outreach coordinator, that's Peter Karen's role, curriculum coordinator, shared central office services, food director services, alternative education, health instructor services at the 8th grade CTE program, career instructor services at the 8th grade CTE program. We have a unified power school. So when I log on to power school, I see all schools, all kids, because that's merged together. We have a unified Empower, that's our student learning management system. We have a unified financial system with Tyler Technology. We have a unified time clock system. We have a unified curriculum. We do unified PD and safety training, and we have been very successful in grant writing. And finally, we also have our vision goals by our leadership teams. These were our 2-year goals set last year. Data-driven focus to support student achievement. So all the schools will have, a student support team, a STAR data team, an attendance team, a positive school environment team. Some schools, that's one team doing it all because they're so small. We have climate and culture as a focus on making sure that we improve the climate and the culture in our schools. You've probably received some surveys from Mr. Fantasia on some work that's going on here at Wisdom Middle High School in order to gain community feedback on that process as well. And then we have our 2 learning transform keys, and that was based on the work we did with Tom Murray a few years ago, where we're right in line with completing these 2 keys that we focused on for a year and a half now. So these are all things that we've done and are currently in play, but there is a lot of unknown. So just to put food for thought for you all as we start to learn more in the upcoming weeks, what is it that this board is going to opt to do? And I know it's hard to say that today, so I don't think we have the answers, but there's the option 1 of continuing with the current strategic priorities, the current services, the current goals, and discuss and make determinations regarding withdrawals and requests from a Valley Unified partner. If a withdrawal request was to be made, and possibly continuing working with the other parties. If it's your desire to continue with Valley Unified, I believe that can still happen. I believe it can still happen with 3 parties, but if it's not 3, it can definitely happen with 2. Or is it your wishes to modify, our strategic goals and our shared services and our Valley vision goals and tailor them more to meet your needs? Or is it going to be your desire to just say, you know what, we'll go with our own. 33 is good. We got this, and we'll do our own thing. My hope is Valley Unified stays strong because I think we've proven that we can do a lot sharing, and I'm hopeful that that's still the future.
We have an interlocal agreement.
Yep.
Is it for 20 years?
I believe it was a 25 year.
25 years?
Yep. That was put in alignment with debt service obligations. So if you were bonding a school, it would have been a 25-year bond. So you didn't want to have anyone backing out while they still owed money.
So to pull out, you would have to.
I believe if one entity wanted to get out, the other 2 would have to approve to vote them out. That's why you never put a ring on that finger unless you're sure. Does anybody have any questions? I just wanted to put that as food for thought. I think this is primarily the direction I'm going to go with the Valley Unified Board when we meet and say, okay, what's happening, and see where things fall from that discussion.
I'm all for staying for option 1. We've accomplished so much with the Valley Unified Education Center, and I would not like to see all the work undone. To go out on our own. I think it's benefited us.
Yeah. I think whereas some districts definitely benefited financially, I think other districts benefited through efficiencies and enhanced services. And I think you guys, for one, got some enhanced services where you had a superintendent literally doing 15 jobs in the past. I'm able to be a superintendent because I have Giselle, I have Lucy, I have Peter, I have these people that can do their jobs. And it works in a formula that's equitable for everyone. You have this much population and this much valuation, so that's the piece that you pay into it. It works well. We just have to figure out our grievances and move past them.
And I think the teachers have enjoyed meeting with the other district preschoolers and having workshops together. And, there's been a lot of pros for us. I wouldn't, as a district, that's my own opinion. But.
Yeah. you know, it's difficult for Miss Denise here, who's here to be the only English teacher in our high school. But, you know, if she can collaborate with other English teachers in the other schools, that's a network now that she didn't have before. So.
I agree with you. My only question, like I agree with option one, but that still leaves us with, we're operating, if this big school doesn't happen, I still have hopes that something will break through. But we're still operating 2 buildings with very minimum staff. And if we, before we went into this Smile Unified, we were exploring on how to collaborate into one building to, again, and that's something we need to think of going forward, is for many reasons, for ed tech covering lunches, for recess, like all those things that we struggle with at the elementary because of low staff. If we're in one building somehow, I mean, if Van Buren can do it the way they're set up, so can we. So, but I do truly believe in the VESC. So.
Agreed.
Okay, next item is to determine the next board meeting.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, your next regular meeting, because we bumped this one up, has you only in March, at the end of March. So I think it might be a good idea to meet sooner than that. And I believe I did provide some dates. So I don't know if any of those are dates you want to consider. Like I mentioned, the Valley Unified Board meeting is the 22nd. So all of these happen before that 22nd meeting.
Any date is fine with me.
The 10th works for me. I can't do the
Earlier better.
How does the 10th sound for everyone?
It's all right with me. Josh?
Jean, does that work for you, Jean?
How about Alex? Casey? Yeah? And Alyssa and
The
Lena?
10th works.
And
I've talked to my wife to see what my schedule
Your secretary, you mean?
is. The 10th is fine.
He just texted her. She said yes.
okay, so I guess we need a motion to set the next regular meeting on July.
Is this going to be at Dr. Back?
This is going to be at, I think, St. John Valley Tech is next. And we were at Dr. Levac, yeah, last meeting.
Yeah.
I remember because
December 15th, it says we were, was I there?
Yeah.
that was, yeah, we were. And there are some new equipment things that we want to show you at the tech center.
Okay.
So
Okay, so we have a motion for meeting on February 10th.
Make a motion to be on February 10th.
Josh, and
Second.
second by Gerard. Any questions? In favor? Everyone's in favor. Okay. The next item would be the addition to the agenda, which is the new SCR2 allocation.
So we do have the Esser 2 funds that are available. The application isn't open yet, but when it does become available, we can, the way that these programs work is you have to apply, you have to put specific jobs or projects that you're proposing. It has to be COVID-19 related. And then it gets kicked back in an approval process, or it gets kicked back and they say, fix this. Once you get approval, then you can start on those projects. And it's a prepayment system. So, you know, if we're gonna buy a bus, we pay for it, and then we ask for reimbursement, and then we get reimbursement. So we don't get like a $200,000 check and then they say, you know, good luck. It goes through that process. There are some guidance documents that we have to follow, and we can also reach out to the DOE with projects in advance. I like to ask a project that I'm thinking is pushing the limits, and see if they're going to have any appetite for it. And so we have that avenue. There has been a request from the local teachers union to possibly look at using part of these funds to compensate extra work that the teachers have been doing in preparation for remote learning, in-classroom learning, combination of both. There's definitely a lot more work involved with this type of thing. There's also been some discussion, about what's happened in other industries with just rewarding employees with funds that to boost morale or that type of thing. There's some clear guidance around that, and Lucy might know a little bit better than me, but with regards to, let's say you wanted to say, let's take X amount of dollars and let's, pay it to our employees as an appreciation. That's not an allowable use of these funds. The DOE will not allow that. The DOE also has language on stipends. Can we stipend people? The DOE has clear, you will not stipend anyone, a blanket stipend. Let's say, everyone gets a $2,000 stipend. Call it a, I don't know, call it a bonus or whatever you want to call it. They say they will not allow that. They will allow for hazard pay, but you have to be in a classification of work that puts you in a hazard pay category. And they're very clear that they don't know if teachers are in a hazard pay category. So it's even their own guidance is vague, which is troubling. If I say, my school nurses, they'll probably say yes. But there's no, guidance on, you can do what the teachers are suggesting and pay for extra work and compensate for extra time. The difficult part with that is that you will have other employees saying, I'm working harder than I ever had before because now I'm working the lunch program, and I was hired here to help kids read, and now I have to go deliver lunches. So you're going to have an inequity if you're giving to some staff or opening a pool of money for some staff if you don't open it for the other. We saw that last spring when we let some folks go home, but not others, because we had work for some folks at home, but not others. It creates a divide. And I don't know how to mend that divide. Josh?
I still think there's a way that we can work with the state to allow this, where we not just reward the teachers, reward every staff member from MSAD33 with some type of compensation or some type of extra pay, extra week's pay, or something like that. There's got to be something in these CRF funds or something that we can work to get that. I mean, I just to not only the teachers, the janitorial staff, the secretaries, the administration, I think they all deserve to be rewarded for what we're going through. And if you ask me, that's all hazard pay. I mean, they're dealing with the pandemic and they're taking everybody else's children. There's got to be something that this board can do, or our administration can do, to work with, to look at these laws better, to find a way to do that. I mean, these people need to be rewarded.
Can we play with the
I
budget?
think
There's
Denise-
no way
I
they
think
can have
Denise
like an
got that.
extra week pay. I know the hospital's done that like twice so far.
Right.
Like just like an extra check, like your average wages that week.
You can fund that locally. You just can't use CRF funds or Esser funds. Lucy, is that what your? Yeah. I mean, we can ask. It doesn't hurt to ask.
Denise has a question.
Denise has a question.
So my understanding with the Esser 2 funds was that they were a little bit looser than the previous funds, and that you could use them for school needs. That was my understanding of it. Perhaps I'm not understanding it correctly, but from what I was, what the information I got was, is that you could use it for school needs. So that's why we requested that.
I think there are buzzwords that the DOE will kick back immediately. If you use the word stipend, they'll say no. If you use the word bonus, they'll say no. So it might be flexibility in the language. And I don't know, I don't know if it's that. I can also reach out to legal counsel and see if they have some advice on how to fandangle the language so that it falls in this basket. All I can tell you is what I know now, and the language that we're reading on our end, stipend, no, bonus, no. So it's going to be how we get there. You're not the only school district looking into this. I got a call today from Ellen in Holton, and she was talking about stuff like this too. And she was frustrated because, in her experience of reaching out, it's been no. So you're not thinking differently. It's just how to figure out how to get there.
What about mental health?
Yeah.
What about, we were gonna take a sizable amount of money out of our own account of savings that we had to fund a lot of the technology upgrades that we need. What if we took the money out of those accounts to do this bonus pay or whatever, and we used the COVID money or whatever it's called, Esser33, take that money and put it toward the technology instead of taking that out of our fund?
Your plan for technology was 3 years, 50,000.
Yes.
And it was budgeted.
Right.
It was to be budgeted 50,000 for each year. Currently, we are knocking off some technology projects with CRF1 and CRF2. Anne Marie's here also if you have direct questions. She's been dealing with them. I thought I'd let you know, Anne Marie has been doing a lot of work for MSAD33 with technology. But we have been knocking off a lot and with E-rate funds, but we're not near the 150,000. I just want you to know that. So we have not completed what you need to do for your technology upgrades yet.
The CRF funds are very specific in that you could not replace something that you had budgeted for and use CRF funds instead. I don't know if that's going to be the same for ESSER funds, but the CRF funds were very specific.
Can we look into that?
Well, yeah, and we are.
Obviously, I think it's a board request that we want to do something for our staff.
Yep.
Denise?
I just also wanted to add, that's actually a question. If like support staff is doing extra hours, I'm assuming they can clock in and get those extra hours, correct?
Yep.
Teachers are salaried. So I did a poll and I did send it out within the email. And the average is 2 to 3. I think half was 2 to 3 more hours per week. And then close to, I think it was 38% was 5 hours more per week. So we don't get that extra compensation is all I'm, so we can talk about the divide, but I don't really think there is a divide. The support staff gets their hourly pay.
Thank you.
Giselle?
I'm just wondering, Denise, I haven't had a chance to look at the survey and I know you sent it. Did that take into consideration the monthly professional development days or the Wednesdays that teachers get without students?
Yes, so today, well, I would say without students loosely because I was in RTI meetings every half hour today. So I wouldn't say that Wednesday is without students because we have the office hours. So I just told them last Thursday, so I'm assuming that would take into consideration what's already been done, so.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions? Okay.
We will examine further. Just so you can wrap your minds around a number, which I don't want to discuss tonight, but you have basically 65 staff members, full-time staff members, roughly. So multiply that times whatever dollar amount you're thinking. You have a $200,000 allocation in ESSER 2. And then I mentioned earlier, what about things like the nurse for next year and remote teachers and temporary support personnel and filling in those gaps. I'm just putting that out there so that, you know, we realize we don't have, you know, $1 million to play with. We have $200,000 if we use this pot of money. That's just food for thought.
Maybe we could brainstorm, like we've had requests in other directions too. For example, in the facilities department, we have rugs and asbestos flooring that needs to be removed. Whether it falls in the regular local budget, or we can push that off as making clean air in our schools. So we've been looking at projects like that. For example, the guidance office here and the 2 side rooms next to it, 2 conference rooms, I believe. I think Kevin has asked county abatement to come in and look at removing those asbestos tiles. Also the band room, and there was one other location. Okay, so we're getting quotes like that, and then we're gonna have to make determinations. Do you want those items to go onto your local budget? Or would you like to use some of those funds, as we've done here for your vestibule and other projects? Do you want some of the grants to cover that? So those are all things to consider also when you're thinking of, and I'm not saying one way or the other, but we need to put it all on the table and then discuss.
And another thing too that I've asked Anne Marie to start looking into is new laptop devices for your teachers, because their devices are now going into the 5th year, 5 years old. So it's something that we had also, you know, earmarked as a project in this as well, similar to what we've done in the other 2 districts. So these are all just things that we just want you to consider that.
We also have a number of CDs that are maturing throughout the years that the reason why we created CDs is if we needed it, we could use it.
Yep.
I'm not saying deplete them, but I'm saying use what we, a little bit.
I think the mental health of our staff right now is an absolute priority. Not that technology isn't and suppress this and everything else, but I think the mental health is huge right now, and we really need to address it.
I think that should be priority 1.
Yep.
So address
All staff.
Thank you.
We'll look into it.
Feedback for your priorities is very important, and I'm glad to hear it.
We will.
Isn't there one CD maturing?
There's one that matured, there's one that matured yesterday, and we temporarily moved it to money market because the interest rate is, and there's one that matures next week. And
And we have to go through, I think it's local approval to use that, right?
you would have to, we'd have to look to see if there's room in the current budget, and what that is, yeah. In order to use those funds for, over and above what you have in your budget, you'd have, I don't know if it's local approval or just the board.
Or if it's considered a reserve fund, I just have to look it up for Randall, because we're dealing with that. If it's considered a reserve fund, you do have to go to the local taxpayer.
What would a CD be considered?
Well,
Depending on-
that's a good question. That's a good question here.
It might be dependent on what that would be
It's not
for.
considered reserve, for them, it's just you've got specific reserve funds, but I think it's just a general.
I think your auditor could tell us if it's considered a reserve or not.
I think we should look into it. Really good.
Okay, so we'll look into doing something.
We will, and we'll explore all options.
Okay, so next is, I need a motion to enter into executive session to discuss the labor contract negotiations per 1 MRSA subsection 405(6)D. So I need a motion. Gerard? Oh,
Second.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, in favor of going into executive session? All in favor?
So we're